So let me get that recording started. Tom, do you feel up for people introducing themselves, like
Yes.
turning on their mics? Okay, we are recording, so if you don't feel comfortable like turning on your camera and sharing who you are and how your experience gardening, then feel free to put it in the chat. But if you feel comfortable, we would love to have you all introduce yourselves, your experience gardening, and if you have any questions today or what you're hoping to learn.
Yes. Perfect.
Does anyone feel up for sharing?
I can go first.
Thanks, Steve.
If I can just quickly introduce myself. So I'm Tom Knapp. I'm with an organization called Plant Chicago. I'm the education manager. And my background in like gardening, I don't really have any like traditional gardening experience. I've managed aquaponic systems and like mushroom cultivation programs at Loyola Chicago. And so that's how I got my interest in like mushrooms, and got really into mushrooms at that point. And then really like gardening outside, I don't have that much experience. I kind of failed at growing tomatoes this year, which was like really surprising because that's like the easiest plant to grow, but so that was a little embarrassing. And I've also grown one tiny watermelon before. So that was fun.
That's awesome. Steve, did you want to go?
Hi, this is Steve. I'm an urban farmer. I grow lots of stuff. Tomatoes are not easy to grow. so not successfully. Some people grow really good green tomatoes. But
That's my
yeah.
experience.
So this year I would say try okra, even if you don't like okra. Okra is pretty kind of leave it and forget it, kind of plant it and forget it kind of plant. I worked with Stein Learning Garden, Black on Black Love, and some local farmers, just kind of helping them out. And I was interested in hearing more about mushroom cultivation. So thank you for having us.
Awesome. Cool. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Shall I just get started, Elizabeth?
Sure. Is there anyone else that wants to share? I saw a couple other cameras come on. I don't know if you can see them all, Tom.
Yeah, I'm glad to introduce myself.
I guess I could go.
Too many people. I love it. Go ahead, Andrew.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you for hosting us. So my name's Andrew Leith. I am a fifth generation Chicagoan. My family's been growing in the interstitial spaces of the city for probably close to 100 years. I'm here today because I'm a historical archaeologist. I'm working on my PhD at Northwestern. And as a historical archaeologist, I'm specifically investigating Chicago's post-industrial landscapes, heavy metal soil toxicity, asking a couple questions. Where is it? Where did it come from historically? And what are people in Chicago's communities today doing to contend with that legacy, specifically through community gardening? So for the past couple of years, I've been involved with Mrs. Roz Owens at the Bronzeville Neighborhood Farm, and she has been a font of wisdom and has been incredibly gracious in terms of inviting me to collect soil samples and analyze them, inviting me to do some kind of small-scale excavation in the garden. And I'm here today because I'm eager to learn about what people in other gardens are doing, make some connections because I'd love to get out and check out some of the other community gardens in the city. And to be perfectly honest, I'm hoping to find a second community garden that might be interested in the work that I'm doing, where the folks might want to host me to do some soil sampling and some excavation. So I'm excited to be here today.
Ooh.
Go ahead, Rivka.
Hi. I have a plot at Brickyard Garden, so that's in the Woodlawn area. I just started gardening again this year after about 10 years not doing it, so I'm very much a beginner. And real mushrooms, especially, reishi and lion's mane and all that stuff. I've never done it before, but I keep bumping into it, different opportunities, so I'm interested in learning that. And Andrew, our garden might be interested in soil testing and I forgot what you said excavation is all about, but you know, people in the garden are always wanting to learn new stuff. So I can shoot you my email in the chat.
Thank you. That would be amazing. Appreciate it.
Go ahead, Robert.
Oh, Robert Johnson, Chicago Grows Food Center for Urban Transformation and Jamaica, the Caribbean, and I'm also looking at the world as we address, food security, food independence. As far as gardening, it's kind of funny. I think more like a farm because for whatever reason, folks in Jamaica, kind of the white during slavery, they were tending to use farm. And they go out, yeah, you learn in Africa. I didn't even like gardening, or I didn't even like such. Hello?
Robert, you're cutting in and out a
Oh.
little bit.
Try killing
You
your
know
camera.
what? That's okay. That's okay. I think the internet where I'm at is not 100. So, but anyway, I've just been involved with farming restoration for a minute now, 60 years, 65 years. Yeah. So.
Awesome. Maybe turn off your camera. That might help. Did anyone else want to share before we get started on mushrooms? All right, Tom. Thank you so much for being here. Tom is awesome. As you mentioned, he's an education manager at Plant Chicago, has a degree in environmental science, worked with Loyola University, and did you already introduce your 6-year-old crested gecko named Gex?
Yeah, I almost mentioned that. Yeah, I've got a gecko. He's a Dalmatian gecko. He's now almost 9 years old, so he's getting up there. He's got some.
You gotta
really
update your
good-
profile on
I
Plant
do.
Chicago.
I do. It's old. I'd update my
Thank
picture.
you so much for being here. Take it away. It's all you.
Sweet, awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I just want to start off with I want this to be like a conversation, a discussion. I will be probably talking a lot, but if anyone has like mushroom related questions at all, please feel free to interrupt, whether it's a message in the chat or just say, hey, I have a question. I've got quite a few slides here, but I'm gonna try to stop at like 12:35 or so to make sure I get enough time for folks to ask questions. But thanks for stopping by, everyone. So my name is Tom. I like to grow mushrooms. I am no mycologist. I'm no expert in the field. I'm just a mushroom enthusiast. Okay. I love fungus. I think they're beautiful. I think they taste really good. And I think if you know how to what to look for and like how to grow mushrooms, anyone can grow mushrooms. It's really like as simple as baking a cake. Okay. Before I get into everything, we already did introductions. But mushrooms can not only be, delicious, or they can also be nutritious, but they can also be beautiful too. So this is a interesting guy. His name is Sam Schumacher. He does like art with mushrooms. He also just recently made a mushroom kayak and kayaked from LA to Catalina Island using like a kayak made out of fungus. So pretty interesting move there. I think it was LA at least. I'm not sure how far LA is from Catalina Island, but it was like a 10-hour trip. So check out Sam Schumacher on Instagram. He's really interesting, does lots of really cool work. Okay. Now I'm going to introduce Plant Chicago real quick. I'll probably zoom through this because I know folks want to get to the mushroom part of the conversation. But if you're not aware of Plant Chicago, our mission is to cultivate local circular economies. We're a small organization. We only have about 7 staff members, but our main programs are education. We have public workshops. So coming up soon, we have a nature journaling class with Sandra Wilcox. So those are still tickets available for that. Sandra does like really cool art, so sign up for that on our website. We also do school field trips. So we hosted around 1,000 young people last year visiting Plant Chicago, me going to schools and working with them. And we also have a summer camp program that goes on for 7 weeks out of the summer, working with After School Matters. Those students are paid. They get to learn about growing food, taking care of chickens, bees, and mushroom cultivation, all that stuff too. We also have a year-round farmers market. We have a retail space where we sell fresh and local food that we source from the urban canopy, but also other farms around the city and around the Midwest. And we also do a lot of solar outreach. We have some shared growing spaces. So if anyone is like looking for a space to cultivate their their seed starts or microgreens, in the next 5-6 months, we're getting renovations done in our building, and we will have a space for our folks to start their seeds, specifically for farmers. So we'll have an indoor cooler, a fridge, a giant fridge. We'll have bathrooms. We'll have a whole space, growing racks, soil, all kinds of stuff. So if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to me, and I can speak with you about that as well. Yeah, circular economy is at the root of what we do. Basically, we're trying to take inspiration from natural systems, for regenerative natural systems. So thinking about fungus uses things that we would can traditionally consider waste, like dead and dying wood, and turns it into something valuable for another organism, right? So it takes that dead and dying wood, turns it back into soil for then another plant to then use that as food, right? So we can take inspiration from nature and hopefully create less waste overall. I won't go deep into this today. But here's our site. It's an old firehouse. The building's over 100 years old. Here's some kids who did a mushroom growing class. So here's some lion's mane. They didn't grow that there. I had that to show them, but they made some really cool pieces, and I'll talk about that in a second. Farmers markets, all that fun stuff. Here's where we're located. We're in back of the yards on 45th and Marshfield, which is just off of Ashland. So if you're around, stop by. We're open Fridays and Saturdays. Come say hi. We have an outdoor space, classroom space, aquaponics, all kinds of cool stuff. So some of the mushroom things that we do, I want to talk about this real quick. This here in the middle, can you all see my cursor? I'm guessing yes. We had the young people draw art to the mushrooms and said, hey, you guys make some mushroom art and draw like, hey, what do you want to say to the mushrooms? Some of the kids drew like little mushroom like figures and said, oh, I love you, mushrooms. And what we did is we actually put that in a mushroom grow bag with some substrate prepared, and then we throw in some grain spawn, which you'll learn about in a second, and that actually grew through the kids' art, and then the mushroom then eventually grew out of that piece, and so the kids could not only see their art be eaten and digested by the fungus, but they could also eat their art once the fungus actually grows through the substrate there. And that was also inspired by Sam Schumacher, so I want to give him his credit there because I saw him do that with some students and I thought that'd be really fun. On the right here is where a student of mine grew the biggest mushroom flush I've ever seen. I don't know, this kid just must have given his fungus some really good air, and then all of a sudden the mushroom grew twice the size of anything I've ever seen. So really cool. And this is me working with a young student back in during COVID when we were all wearing masks. Okay. So can anyone answer this question? What is mycology?
Study of mushrooms.
I think a little bit more broad, not just mushrooms.
Study of fungus.
Now we're thinking there. Very good. Yes, the study of fungus. Okay. So mushrooms are a small branch of like the fungal kingdom, right? So here pictured are a bunch of mushrooms, right? But there's also a bunch of fungus that kind of just look like little blobs if you were to put it onto a petri dish, right? But there's millions and millions of different types of fungus. Scientists think there's like between like 3 to 5 million. It depends on like which article you look at. But there's tons and tons of mushrooms. So far, I believe we identified about 200,000, 300,000 species. So there's still like lots of work to be done in the mycological realm. Here we have a bunch of different fungus pictured. This is a Schizophilum commune. This is like boar's head or like bear's head. It's like a brother to lion's mane. This is bird's nest, right? Some of you might see these in your mulch after a rain event, right? So all these different types of fungus all serve like different purposes in nature, but for the most part, they're all like decomposers. They break things down, right? You can find them in all different forms. You can find them fungus in water. You can find fungus in soil, of course. You can also find fungus in the air in the form of spores moving around, okay? And they're just super diverse, super interesting, and of course, they're the most widely distributed organisms on the planet. So you can find them everywhere, usually after a rain event where you see all the mushrooms start popping up out of the ground. Okay, So they break things down. Pictured over here, this is a yeast. So obviously, if we all like bread, we all, some of us might drink beer. That is obviously helped via yeast there. And there's molds, there's lichen, there's mildews, excuse me, and there's mushrooms. So we got a few different pictures here. This here is actually a lichen. So this is a symbiotic relationship between an algae and a fungus. Sometimes there's another kind of like partner there, but usually an algae and a fungus. So that is like a brotherhood, an intimate relationship between these two organisms who are now combined into one thing. You see these all over trees everywhere, sometimes on concrete and cement too. Those are super long-lived fungus. Down here on the right, this is a cordyceps fungus, at least maybe a brother to cordyceps. It is a fungus that attacks insects. So I'll show some more images of that fungus there, but a really, really cool organism there. And then this is, I believe, maybe like a honey fungus there growing on a tree. So they usually will just decompose dead or dying things. Sometimes fungus will actually grow on things that are alive too, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So folks don't know like the basics of like fungus and how they're different from plants and animals. Plants have chlorophyll, right? They're able to photosynthesize. Fungus cannot photosynthesize, so they have to digest things to get their energy to survive. Kind of like us. But instead of digesting things internally, whenever we eat food, we take that food in our stomachs to break it down, and then our intestines are able to absorb it into our bodies. Fungus actually have to grow around something and then digest it from the outside in. Okay, and so that by that they're able to break their food down and eventually expand out and grow, eventually breaking down whatever they might be growing on, whether that's wood, which it's usually wood, but sometimes it's an insect, sometimes it might be, maybe not a person. I don't want to spook you guys out, but yeah, something usually things that are dead or dying. Okay, now fungus eat usually through mycelium. Okay, so I want to show you all some cool stuff before I continue. This might be the easiest thing to see, but this is a book that we have grown some oyster mushrooms on. Okay, so like I mentioned, mushrooms usually grow on wood. What are books made out of? Older books, usually paper, right? Which is obviously wood. So you can use the traits of what fungus like to grow on by taking, wood, or using maybe like shoes or clothes that might be made of cotton and grow mushrooms on some pretty funky stuff. But this mycelium, all this kind of white fuzz you kind of see there, is actually actively breaking down this book. Now, this is probably dead because it's been dehydrated, but if I were to leave that in a bag over a long period of time, letting that fungus kind of grow and slowly digest that book is going to begin to shrink because it's actively digesting that food source, okay? So these little white threads here are the mycelium. These are the main body of the fungus. So it's basically like a little vegetative web that grows, expands, and creates metabolites and enzymes that breaks down the food source, okay? Any questions so far? This here is actually, does anyone know what this is? Anyone tell?
Somebody's trunk that they left wood chips in.
Wood chips or something, right? They must have maybe this car somehow ended up in like a lake and they pulled it out because it must have been very, very wet in there for this fungus to start growing through here, right? But you can see actually this like white fuzz here is the mycelium, like the leading edge we call it, of the mycelium slowly growing throughout this trunk here and digesting this trunk. So I show my kids this because they're always like, they never realize what it is. I guess, oh yeah, they don't have cars, but yeah, not good. Okay. Mushroom life cycle. This is maybe pretty straightforward, but I just want to cover this real quick. So mushrooms, of course, they'll produce spores. So spores will be dropped from the fruiting body, which is like the mushroom itself, and then that will then float around, until it finds a suitable environment for it to grow in. Usually that requires some food, that requires moisture, that requires fresh air, and then like a suitable temperature for that fungus to exist in. And so you'll find it will drop onto this log here, and then the spore will then turn into mycelium. That spore will like germinate and then grow and cover this log. And over the course of months, probably years, maybe decades, that fungus will slowly break down and digest that log, eventually creating primordia, which is the word for baby mushrooms. And then that process will repeat itself time over time. The process of like spores mating, I really don't understand. It's pretty complicated. I'm not a microbiologist, so I'm not going to go into all that. Here's the same image basically, but just shown on a larger scale. And then this is actually the spore growing on soil. They can grow on soil too, right? Soil is just mostly broken down wood and sand and silts and clays, but all that good stuff. Okay. Now here's some other images of some mushrooms growing in people's houses. So these are actually oyster mushrooms here and here. These I'm not entirely sure, but this is not a good sign, obviously. So if you have this happening in your basement, in your house, anywhere, obviously call a plumber because there's a leak somewhere. Because mushrooms, like I mentioned, need a lot of water to exist. That means there is a lot of water leaking somewhere here at some point. Now, all this white stuff here, you see someone was trying to brush up is probably spores. Oyster mushrooms are known to dump a buttload of spores, so that's what that is over there. Okay. Now, could you eat these? You could, honestly. I wouldn't recommend it. You don't know what kind of funky stuff these mushrooms have absorbed into their bodies. Fungus are like known to be remediators, right? They hyperaccumulate things into their fruiting bodies, particularly metals. And so if you have, funky stuff you're using for building materials, it might be accumulating that into its fruiting bodies. And then if you're ingesting that, that might not necessarily be a good idea to stay happy, healthy, and alive. This is so I'm gonna go into some like other fun kind of tidbits. Got some fun pictures here for like other fun mushroom facts that I usually like to share with folks because the little mushrooms is like so diverse. Yes, eating is important and like understanding like, okay, like how do we grow mushrooms? Well, yeah, I gotta understand some of the background context too and like why mushrooms are so cool. Although you may already be convinced, I'm gonna do a little bit more convincing, okay? Now, this here is a tree, right? Now, if I was this tree, I would not be too happy, right? This is like a fungus growing all over me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what the heck? I've got some kind of fungal disease attacking me. Yeah, not good news. This is the humongous, or a part of the humongous fungus. So this is one of the largest known or living organisms on the planet, if not the largest, right? This is a fungus that is growing in Oregon, and it is basically genetically all one organism via like DNA sequencing. Scientists identified that, and it's this really, really large mushroom or fungus, excuse me, that is basically creeping through the root systems of trees and expanding, and digesting and slowly killing other trees. So this organism covers about 2,300 acres, and it's estimated to be almost 9,000 years old. So pretty cool, but also not pretty cool. It's actually still expanding to this day, and it's pretty interesting. And yeah, fun little fact there. Humongous fungus. Scientists aren't really that creative with names, unfortunately. So I mentioned there that the fungus roots kind of fungal mycelium expands and grows through root systems of trees. One thing that I want you guys to take away from this is that there are rarely plants that just grow alone. A lot of plants will actually have like fungal relationships with the fungus in the soil that actually supports that plant growth. I think it's about 70-80% of plants have relationships. So some type of fungus, some type of bacteria in the soils, right? And so understanding that like these relationships in soil are not just plants, it's not just worms, it's not just soil, right? There's a really intimate relationship between all these different organisms coexisting inside soil. There's insects, there's bacteria, there's fungus that interact with other fungus in the soils, there's bacteria that interact with those fungus, right? So it's like a really dynamic relationship and really intimate between all these things. And if there's some kind of like disruption in that balance, then things can kind of get out of whack, of course. So this is a meme, but it's pretty cool because this is like kind of what's actually happening inside these organisms, right? So the fungal mycelium is actually penetrating the root systems of these trees, and the roots are actually penetrating the fungus as well. So like I said, it's this like dynamic relationship. So it's called a mycorrhizal relationship. There's a few different types of those. I'm not going to go into those today, but this is a very, very intimate relationship, and some fungus will not grow without these relationships, and some trees, like I mentioned, will not grow without these relationships too. So super, super important there. So remember that. Ooh, does anybody know what this is? Bless you.
An
What are we
ant?
looking at? It's an ant. Yes. What kind of ant is this?
I forgot what they call those guys. You see those? You see those a lot in the back bush.
Yeah.
That is not a. Oh my God, what you call? Oh God,
The ant is cutting something.
duck. That's not a duck ants, is it?
A
They may
dock.
call it a different name in Jamaica. They will eat down your house.
Oh no. This one, if your house is made of leaves, this one will eat it.
Okay. Well, the duck. Oh, anyway.
Okay.
By
Thanks.
the way, that the previous one where you showed the mushroom when you go into the back bush, I like
Uh-huh.
places like Blue Mountain, you see like unload of that kind of relationship with mushroom growing
Yeah.
up the tree along the ground, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Any other guesses on what kind of ant this is? This is a leaf cutter ant. Okay. Now, what do leaf cutter ants eat? I'm getting to something here. Don't worry. I'm cooking. Let me cook.
Leaves.
Leaves. Now, you'd be wrong. Okay. Is this a leaf class or is this a fungus class? What do fungus eat, generally speaking?
Other things.
Plants.
Living things.
Is that
Plants.
a fungus class?
So this ant basically takes leaves and will then cultivate that leaf and use that leaf to grow a fungus. Okay. These ants are mushroom cultivators. Now, my buddy Matt Nelson at the Field Museum, he taught me that one. Okay. So these guys cultivate these plants to grow mushrooms. So like these are like the first mushroom farmers, right? So like I mentioned, there's these intimate relationships with plants, but also with the fungus. But then there's whole other world of different relationships with like insects and fungus and then other bacteria, right? So like this is a whole new world of these things going on that like, and these ants actually have grown to be so like reliant on these fungi that they actually produce metabolites from their heads to actually treat this fungus if another fungus tries to grow on their plants. So they are really, really intimately interconnected. So these are my favorite types of fungus. Okay, these are fungus that grow on insects. Okay, so here we have a few different varieties of cordyceps. The exact varieties I'm honestly not entirely sure. It's called like Ophiocordyceps if you want to look it up. It's actually extremely medicinal mushroom too. So this one here is actually someone who's cultivated it on like, a larger scale as opposed to like finding it out in the wild, excuse me. But it's supposed to help with oxygen uptake into your lungs. A bunch of Olympic athletes will take this and apparently it's supposed to help them, be big and strong. There's not too much research as far as I'm aware that indicates, a lot of benefits, but the placebo effect is real. So, who knows? But you can grow this. I've grown this. It's honestly really straightforward. If people have questions on how to do it, I'm happy to give some tips here and there. I grew it in a jar with rice and a broth that I made, and then just inoculated, which is like introducing the fungus into the jar. And then voila, I had cordyceps growing. Okay. So it grows in the wild, it grows down here like this. You can find it down buried into there. Somehow that spore that I mentioned earlier will catch, get onto an insect, and then that spore will then germinate and grow onto that insect, eventually like digesting that insect, like I said, from the outside in, and eventually that fungus will then protrude from the insect itself. And then this is actually where the spores are released here. Okay, that's the fruiting body right there, and this here as well. So you can see the little like dots on there. So they're called like ascocarps or something. That's where the spores are released from. Okay. Now that one's cool. This guy here, this is a cicada. Now, do you remember the broods that appeared recently? I think it was that this summer? Was that last summer? Time flies by. It might have been in the springtime. So
Yes.
what's up with this cicada? Do y'all notice something on its rear? That is a fruiting body of a fungus that has replaced that cicada's butt. Okay, that is called Massospora. This is a fungus that basically will spread via the mating rituals of cicadas as they, do their business. That fungus, this little white part here, will actually release spores, and those spores will go onto a cicada, and then eventually start to grow onto that cicada, and then fill that cicada with it's some kind of like psychedelic compound along with an amphetamine, and then drives that cicada crazy, which it will then go and start mating with other cicadas, male or female, and then basically spreading more spores around. Okay. Now, I know this story because there was a guy who studied at the University of Virginia or Massachusetts. A friend of mine, while I was volunteering at the Food Museum, told me that this guy had a bunch of these in his lab, and they found that it had like this, controlled substance in the actual fruiting body itself, and he had to report it to the DEA because he had that in his thing. So he was like, "Oh, geez, that's technically illegal," but he was just doing research. So yeah, pretty cool. Okay, so fun stuff about mushrooms, mycology. There's a lot more I could talk about, but I'm also kind of going slow, so I'm going to kind of speed this up here a little bit. You can grow mushrooms in all sorts of different ways. I'm going to focus on oyster mushrooms because those are the easiest to grow. I'll show here, this is oyster mushrooms growing on literal just toilet paper. I do this with kids. We've had a lot of success doing this. It's not hard at all. You can find resources online how to do this. It's really straightforward, and everyone has toilet paper, I hope. And if you don't, do your own thing, not judging at all. And this is some oyster mushrooms growing on books. So you can see this is an oyster mushroom growing on a book there, right? So oysters are nice because they'll freaking grow on anything. They're not super picky, and they grow fast. You can grow it on books and shoes, maybe. Not exactly. There's like some straw in there. So that's where the fungus is actually getting its food from. It's just kind of growing through the shoes, but sneaky. Logs. I don't have much experience growing on logs, but straw and buckets I have a lot of experience in. Okay. So when we're thinking about sustainability, the best way to grow mushrooms is buckets that are used, food grade, of course. And usually with oyster mushrooms, I like to use straw. Straw works super well. It's relatively easy to get your hands on, and you can get a lot of mushrooms for just not so much effort. Filter patch bags are like the standard for like mushroom cultivators. They're just quick and easy, although it is plastic, obviously, so it's not ideal. But they're really, really cheap. You can use a bunch of them, and once you're done with them, you throw them away. Buckets, you usually have to clean, which can be a bit of a pain, but the things we do for love, right? And then you can also do these large plastic bags too. These are pretty handy. Basically, it's a large plastic bag that you poke really small holes in to get some air circulation, and those seem to work really well too, but they can be pretty heavy. So if you're really thinking about mushroom cultivation, start out small. This is like the whole complicated process. You don't have to do all of this. This is just kind of showing different ways you can go about using grain spawn. Okay. So the way I like to simplify it is, if you want to grow mushrooms, I say start with grain. Okay. Grain spawn is just imagine it's like the seed of the fungus. Okay. Well, it's not really the seed of the fungus, but it's a seed equivalent of like how to start a fungus. Okay. You can then transfer that into a substrate, or we call it the bulk. So I just bought some grain spawn online. I saturated my toilet paper here roll with got it wet with a kettle that I just got really hot, poured that onto the toilet paper roll, and got really hot. It also gave it moisture, right? And then I let it cool down, and I poured the grain spawn into the hole there, and then I put it in this fancy bag with this little filter patch here. And then this, over the course of the next few weeks, will grow. And we're actually going to use this for our fundraiser as awards, because we're weird. But that would be cool. So, and then it will grow. Now, toilet paper mushrooms, you're not going to get that much actual mushroom from growing mushrooms on toilet paper. And that's just because it's toilet paper. It's been bleached more than likely. It's stripped of its nutrients. There's just not a whole lot there. That's why if you were to grow mushrooms on a log, right, you'll produce mushrooms year after year after year until that log is totally broken down. Here, this will give you a tiny little flush of mushrooms, maybe this big, and then it will basically be no longer viable, more than likely. So this whole diagram here, though, any mushroom you've ever eaten has come from a clone of a mushroom. So you can clone any mushroom from the outdoors. You go, you find a wild mushroom. Hey, reishi, I want to clone that. You take that whole fruiting body, rip it off. You can take a small piece of that, put that onto a petri dish. You might have to do that a couple times, but eventually you'll get a pure culture, and then you can then use that to do an inoculation of grain. Now, this whole part of mushroom growing, I also teach a 6-hour long class on how to do all this. So trying to cover this in like 30 minutes is pretty tricky. But if you do have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to kind of give you some tips and just maybe walk you through this in a little more detail because I just love talking about it. But yeah, so you can grow mushrooms on mounds. You can grow mushrooms on stumps. If you have like a stump or you recently cut down a tree, you can like cut the stumps in thin slices, throw some grain spawn down, layer it like a lasagna, and then keep it like covered with a bag, and then that will slowly fuse together, and then you might get some mushrooms out of there. Okay, yeah, cool. Questions about this at all? I don't want to stay on here for too long because I know we got some other questions probably. That's some supplies you might need. I can also share this presentation. I don't mind. Substrates, let's not get into all that. How are we feeling about questions maybe now?
We did have a request for information about the class.
The class. Okay, so I have not made any new classes on this schedule, but maybe we can do that for November or December. So what you can do is you can follow us on Instagram. If you have Instagram, if you don't have Instagram, sign up for our newsletter on our website. Okay, that's where we're gonna have updates of different things that we're doing. Oh, I'm sharing my screens, right? I can share. Just go to our website, plantchicago.org. You can sign up for our newsletter. I think at the very bottom of the website.
I just added both to
Cool.
the chat.
They can send it to you, Elizabeth. You can share it on your newsletter because I know a lot of folks read that. So, yeah.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
A little plug
yeah,
there.
Rivka, go ahead. We have more questions coming in.
Let's go.
Yeah, what about during Chicago winters? Can you grow mushrooms outside and will they keep growing through the winter? Or do they need a certain temperature? I'm sorry if I missed that information.
No, that's a good question. I didn't cover that. So thank you for asking. They will basically be, whenever I'm not growing like my grain or anything, if I order it and I don't use it immediately, I'll throw it in the fridge because it'll slow the growth process down a lot. So everything's still out there. It's just going to be hanging out for a little bit. What happen I noticed with some mushroom grow bags that I make, if the conditions around the fungus are not like optimal, it will just kind of sit there for a while. And then eventually, once that condition gets like comfortable for it to grow, it will pop out and do its thing. And then you're like, oh yeah, Bob's your uncle. It's pretty cool. Yeah, but it'll just hang out in the winter probably. Cool. Good question.
We had another question come through the chat. I have a block from pre-grown mushrooms in a plastic bag. How do I start it over?
From pre-grown mushrooms, so do you have the substrate bag? Did you already grow the mushrooms out of the bag and you still have like the bag? Sorry, I'm a little unclear on what the question is exactly. Is it
Herman, can you unmute or?
I can stop my share. That's going to be helpful. I can look at the chat too. Let's see. I have a block.
Or asking the question. Who asked the question? Do you want to try and unmute?
Yeah, so I don't understand. That can mean a couple different things.
Okay.
Do you eat the mushrooms from the trunk? Probably not. You could. Might have a tummy ache afterwards. Yeah, so the block, the mushroom will only really grow for as long as it has food available to it. So usually what will happen is you might get a couple flushes, right? That's what we call them, is like the mushroom fruiting event. And it will happen once, maybe twice. But it will usually no longer than much more than that. But if you have a good mushroom like strain, so imagine you have like 10 blocks or 10 pounds of mushroom substrate. Usually you get about 10 pounds of mushrooms from that 10 pounds of substrate. With oysters particularly, it can change depending on the variety of the fungus. It's called biological efficiency.
Go ahead.
Me?
Yeah, Rivka, go ahead.
Sorry, my connection's not great. So I bought mushrooms from the farmer's market before. They're obviously the farmers grow them but they're dried. So can you use those dried ones that you buy from the store, farmer's market, to start something?
The fresher, the better. I don't want to say no, but the fresher, the better. Usually, if I'm trying to do some like extractions or trying to do like a little cloning or whatever you want to call it, I'll use like a really fresh mushroom. But maybe there's some like spores that might be like stuck on that dried mushroom. Maybe that could be activated if you were to put it onto agar. So never say never, nature works in really mysterious ways, right? So I think it's worth a shot. But then again, you also then like the longer it's been out, the increased likelihood that like other spores have landed on it too, right? So there could be like you might grow your fungus, but also might grow something else, and it's really, really hard to identify what's growing on a petri dish if it looks kind of like mycelium from your mushroom, but it might just be mold. It's usually mold. Yeah. Yeah. Grown a lot of mold in my day. A lot of mold. Yeah. And like
Carmen,
oh, sorry, go ahead. No, if you do this, you're gonna fail. You're gonna mess up a lot. It's okay. When I first started, I got hired at Loyola to grow mushrooms. I didn't grow mushrooms for like 3 months. But it's okay. Obviously, when you first start out something, you're always gonna suck at it. And if you're a natural at that thing, then maybe it's your call and you should do it forever. But usually you suck at it, so don't worry about it. I was like ripping bags in half, like just in the pressure cooker, and there's a whole mess. So like if you have like trouble, please reach out to me. Don't be discouraged after one failed thing. Maybe you're just doing that, change that one thing, and it might actually help you have a lot of success. Mushrooms are really easy. Honestly, the less you do, the better.
sounds like good gardening advice too. Carmen, I saw you unmute. Did you want to try asking your question again? All right, well, Carmen works on that. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so I was in and out. Sorry, I get distracted at work sometimes. I don't know if you mentioned any of the different methods that you've grown mushrooms in that are not traditional. I have a clean room, and there's absolutely no spores and from various stuff. Because I always see these videos where people are like putting straw into laundry baskets and growing these beautiful flushes of oyster mushroom or lion's mane, and I'm like, no way in hell, it never works for me.
Yeah.
Have you had any luck with that? And if so, can you give me the secret to how you inoculate it so that you just don't get a whole bunch of fungus and slime mold and all
Yeah.
kinds of other stuff?
So like you gotta think about how things like work in nature, right? Nature is not sterile by any means at all. So I used to kind of be like how you were thinking now, where it's like everything has to be perfect, everything has to be super meticulous, and like I need the materials, and I would buy expensive equipment, and it was just like too much going on. And then I found as I was like teaching classes about this stuff, everyone was like, I'm not gonna buy all this equipment. I'm not gonna do all this extra stuff. I'm not gonna buy an autoclave and a pressure and a laminar flow hood just to grow 2 pounds of mushrooms. And so I found myself kind of taking a back seat and thinking like, oh, these are all very good points. So I kind of like brought down my mushroom cultivation class to like the bare essentials of like what you need to grow. So literally, like you just buy sawdust at the grocery the Lowe's or wherever, the pelletized stuff. You get it wet. You don't want it too wet. You want a little, you want it like where if you do a squeeze it, a couple drops would come out. Put it in a bag, put it in that filter patch bag. There's some grain spawn in there, maybe a cupful's worth. Try to be as clean as you can and keeping that bag for closed or open as short amount of time as possible. Wrap it with like some twine or whatever this is, and then seal it and then let it sit. and then you will grow a lot of mushrooms like that. What I usually do is I'll just pasteurize my materials that I'm growing with. So straw, I'll get a bucket. I'll get the straw. I'll get it. We use like a shredder to cut the straw like really small. So there's like not such large pieces and not so much air that can fit between it. And then I'll just get really hot water and put it in that bucket. And then that straw will then pasteurize over like the course of a few hours. And then I'll dump all that water out and I'll do it again. And then I'll then take that straw, put it onto a table that has like holes on it so it can like drain. And then I'll throw grain spawn and mix it in there. And then I'll throw it in a bucket with a bunch of holes in it, maybe like 10 holes total. And then that grows. It might take some time, but it'll grow.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, if you want to reach out too, I'm happy to walk you through a process too. If you walk me through your process, and I'll see where there might be some tweaks you might want to make there.
All right. It may be a few weeks because we're still closing up the farm stuff here. But
Right.
November, if you get a strange call from a little black man, it's probably me.
I am looking forward to that call.
All right. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, of course. And I'll leave my email here, y'all. Please, I'm so serious about reaching out. I do not. I'm happy to talk. If you don't reach out, I will.
All right, Carmen. Carmen, I'm hoping you can unmute, and as soon as I see you unmute, I will stop talking to give you a chance so that you can ask your question. While you're doing that, thank you all for coming today. Happy to hang out and keep answering questions, but just want to make sure I catch people before they leave. We will continue these conversations on Community Food Navigator. If you're not already a part of it, it is an app that is very user-friendly, lots of information, lots of sharing resources. And then if you have a second to fill out a survey for us, this is just for internal use. It just tells us how to keep doing these and how to do them better and how to do topics that you all are interested in. Mushrooms came up more than once last year, so I was really excited to be able to get Tom in here. So if you have a second to fill that out. Yeah. Other questions? General questions about gardening or about Plant Chicago?
We have a farmer's market coming up this Saturday. If folks are free, I will not be here. I'll be out of town, unfortunately, but if you want to come by, we have chickens, we've got bees, we've got all kinds of cool stuff. So please feel free to stop by.
All right, Carmen, did you get in? Your Wi-Fi okay? I know you often struggle with sound.
Not the Wi-Fi.
So if you want to try asking in the chat again, you're welcome to.
Yeah, do you have a
the
used
Wi-Fi.
a block you've already grown mushrooms out of, or do you have a block you want to put fungus into? Maybe I can help if I can.
I'm guessing it's a block that had fungus in it that she wants to grow more in.
You can soak in some water, some cold water, and then over the course of like 3 hours and dump the water out, and you might get another flush.
Okay.
That would be.
And then how many times you can essentially reuse that then until it's gone?
Yeah, not like, it won't like, disappear, but it will like it'll maybe fruit maybe like twice more times, maybe. But you're gonna get repeatedly smaller flushes every time. So a lot of
Okay.
like large scale mushroom growers, they will take the first flush and then just toss out the mushroom block because it doesn't make sense for them to keep getting smaller flushes when they can just bring in a new block that's going to produce more than like the second flush of another block.
Okay.
And you can always
Carmen, I
add
saw you
those
connect.
blocks. You can always add those blocks to your compost pile or into your garden, and
Yes.
it's awesome for retaining water and helping to break down the wood chips in your garden.
Yes,
And
yes.
if you get a flush in your garden, don't eat it because you're not a mycologist.
Yeah, you gotta be careful there. Yeah, be careful. Yeah, we'll throw our blocks, if they have fruit like once or twice and it still has some it still got some weight to it, I'll put it out in the garden. We've gotten some flushes that way and I've eaten from there. So yeah. You gotta be careful though, because sometimes you'll have a random mushroom pop up and you're like, that doesn't look like the one that I put over there. And yeah, I met a kid, he had eaten I actually don't know what he ate, but he ate a poisonous mushroom and he was in a coma for a few months. But he's okay now.
Maybe Destroying Angel. That's the one that looks like the what do you call it? Looks like the giant like the portobello mushrooms, but it's one of the most poisonous ones in North America.
Yeah, it's the
So,
white amanita one.
yes, yes. I had a
They look so
mycologist
pretty.
tell me. Yeah, they do. I had a mycologist tell me it's better to spend your time learning the 10% of mushrooms that are deadly poisonous than the 90% that are not.
Yes, exactly. And as much as I know about mushrooms, and I'm technically wild mushroom certified.
Oh, I need to
So
hang out with you.
yeah, so I do all that stuff. I only eat the mushrooms that don't have any poisonous lookalikes if I'm out there foraging. So there's like
Yeah,
lion's mane,
chicken of woods,
chicken of the woods, yeah, and then
morels.
morels. Yes, there you go. Morels are the good ones too. Yeah,
Those
morels.
are the only three I try to get.
And apparently people have been eating false morels, I think in Europe somewhere, and apparently there's really high rates of Alzheimer's. I believe if you eat a lot of false morels, apparently.
Yeah. They're solid. So
Yeah,
I don't
solid, yeah,
have to be
exactly.
confused. I like if it's not hollow, then don't eat it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Sorry. I'm gonna be quiet now. Sorry.
No, you're exactly correct. Yeah, it's gotta be hollow. If it's hollow, it's not a false morel. It's a real morel.
Yeah, maybe we do a whole workshop on which ones are, how to identify what to eat. Or maybe the advice is like, don't eat it unless you've done depth of research.
Yeah, just like hey, just don't do. Yeah, maybe a short presentation. Just
Yeah.
don't. Go take the class.
Don't eat
Take a real class. Don't listen to
Yeah.
me.
Carmen, I see you on mute. Do you want to ask your question? If we can hear you, I'm hoping.
Carmen, we can't hear you if you're talking. Blink if you can hear us, Carmen.
I'll follow up with you. Tom did answer what we think your question was. So if it wasn't right, let me know and we'll get Tom to answer the right question. Okay, I see you're connecting back to audio, so hopefully that works. All right, Carmen, are you there? You want to ask your question? I know it takes a minute. All right. 12:59, if you have to hop off, please do. I'm going to hang out another minute. Other questions about gardening, about mushrooms, about Plant Chicago, about Chicago Grows Food, about life that we might be able to answer?
Oh, this is Steve. I'm gonna be going tomorrow to pick up the 30 straw bales. So we're gonna try to turn the greenhouse over by Sabina Gardens into